Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Emily, the Fang girl. On my YouTube channel, I talk about tech in Singapore, lifestyle, and moving overseas. And today, I have a special guest, Derek Wong.
Hi everybody.
After both of us have been here for 2 years in Singapore, he's going to share his own experiences. Derek, why don't you give us some context about how you came to Singapore 2 years ago?
Yeah, I came here in January 2020, same time that Emily did. Very different circumstances. I came to join a startup program, like a startup generator accelerator program. So that was a very unusual experience where you have 100 people trying to do a startup. Yeah. But that was right around COVID time. So I spent the first 3 months just heads down, just trying to network like crazy, thinking of business ideas. And then I was really focused on getting funding. And then I thought, I'll make friends after our startup gets funded. And then as soon as we did get the funding, boom, we got our circuit breaker restrictions. So that made it really tough to make friends and to socialize, but good thing I had some good flatmates. So I learned a lot about European culture and how to bake quiche. It was a great time. Worked on that startup for I guess the first year, and that was an interesting experience. So my Singapore experience had two distinct halves. It was the startup life and then the career life. So I went back to I guess the corporate world. So I started at a company here in the product management space, and that role's had its ups and downs too, as well as with the ups and downs with the restrictions. So it's been an interesting ride so far. A little bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, I definitely would say that, like, Derek, you've done a lot since coming to Singapore, definitely doing your own startup and then jumping into the corporate world of Singapore. What were your expectations of Singapore when you came here? Because you came here to be an entrepreneur, and a lot of things obviously have changed for you, but like, what were you hoping to get out of Singapore when you landed?
I think it was a really cool experience overall, even with the restrictions. I think I got a real taste of the local culture. I think having relatives here, to be able to visit and spend Chinese New Year with was really, really cool. Expectation wise, I thought it would be a little bit easier to meet people, meet friends. I think it was just tough with all the restrictions. I think that was a very atypical experience. I think the job experience was also quite interesting. I'm taking the latter half, where my company, it's like half local and then half, I guess, international. And I found that I had 1 year of, I guess, local know-how and lingo, so it was quite easy to meet a lot of like local friends afterwards. But again, with all the restrictions, a little bit tougher. How about you?
I think my initial reactions were that I was going to be here for a short while and then I would travel. Yeah, but I didn't know I would end up staying in Singapore for 2 years. But initial reactions obviously were just, it's very clean, easy to live, and easy to get around.
I think after the first year I had a choice. Should I stay in Singapore or should I go home and back to California? And that was a really tough call because I really enjoyed my life in Singapore, even if I knew that it wouldn't be like a super long-term piece. But I just I felt like I really fit in. It was like a really cool like mosaic of different cultures, whether it's like Indian, culture and cuisines, local Chinese culture, and even learning more about like the Malay culture as well. I really enjoyed that, and I think I have learned a lot in this past few years.
Do you think you're out of the honeymoon stage now? Like, it's been 2 years. I think every expat who comes to Singapore is like bright-eyed, starry-eyed. But I mean, Singapore is only so big, and I honestly, like, I think you and I have very exploratory natures in general, so we've kind of seen like every nook and cranny of this country. I feel like you're still in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, I think my honeymoon phase was literally just the first few months, and then I really just got to realize what life is like here, whether it's what is life like in the heartlands, not just in Tanjung Pagar, the CBD, but going deep. And that's why I literally chose to live in a very, very local area instead of in River Valley, which is we call it like an expat enclave with like gated communities, waterfalls, and just it's really beautiful. But I didn't want that experience. I wanted to continue to learn more about the local life. And so I'd say that honeymoon phase was over a long time ago, but I think that was always just hypothesis testing. Like, do I like life here on a day-to-day more than what I'm used to in the United States? And in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. So it's been a really, really cool learning.
I think one thing I really appreciate about you as well is that you don't exactly live like an expat. You live like a local, right? You have a really good Singlish accent, go to kopitiams, you know people from the neighborhood and like things like that.
No.
So like, what's the best way to integrate? Like, what advice would you give to like these expats who just live in their own expat bubble?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's a choice too, right?
Yeah.
Because we have so many mutual friends that do the more River Valley life,
Yeah.
the expat life that
Yeah.
would. Yeah, it's just
It's okay.
preference,
Yeah,
right?
it's
yeah,
preference,
yeah. I think if you want to get that local experience, you know, really seek it out, you know, and I think as an ABC, I was really interested in learning more about what is like the Singaporean Chinese experience like, and you know, whether it's reading the books, biography, and memoirs of Lee Kuan Yew, like the founding father of Singapore, or like watching Boys to Men.
It's on Netflix, right?
Is it? Oh, I watched
it.
I may have watched a stream, like a pirated stream, but like
okay.
it's just kind of fun just having a curiosity of like, oh, like, how do you say that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always learning new lingo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you teach us some, or maybe say like 2 things?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I had like a pinnacle moment. So I did like a talk at Yale and US like 2 weeks ago for something, and I was like, well, this is the first time I'm doing a live presentation to students, right, in Singapore. And I was like, wait, I can also showcase how much I have learned, right? And it's like the local memes, right? Like, yeah, or it's like, I think I use like emojis, and it's like, what is this and this? I had like a thing that was like pinkish in color, and then something that was dark gray. And what's this? It's like black pink, right? It's like, oh, you can still like create memes that like resonate with them.
Yeah.
And then one of them, it was okay, I don't want to describe the whole emoji sequence, but it's like talk sing song, which is basically like you just kind of like talk shit. You just kind of like talk with your coworkers. Like, hey, like, what are you guys doing?
Like, shoot the shit.
In a way, yeah. So that was a fun one. And then just staying relevant with like a lot of the local memes, because I think those happen very quickly, where because it's a pretty small country, and there's not as many contrarian media outlets, right? It's usually like one media outlet. Therefore, it's really easy to circulate, you know, big stories. For example, I think it's the CEO of SPH, Singapore Press Holdings, when he did his, oh, I take umbrage at that comment, right? Like, then everyone knows it, right? So just kind of having a curiosity about what the local news are, that's quite enjoyable.
Oh gosh. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. But what about like your favorite phrase?
Oh,
yeah. Because he's a really good Singlish.
Oh man,
accent.
I'm gonna get canceled for this.
No, you're not. I think every Singaporean person who's like heard you speak Singlish are like amazed. You wouldn't get canceled for this.
It's like again, it's not like long phrases, but it's just like little catch things. And one of my teammates, like my direct reporter, he's Singaporean, so I get to ask him a lot of things, and he like explains things to me. So this one can, or like confirm, double confirm. Yeah, just fun ones.
You're really good at it, and I think it's like I think people appreciate it too. It just you got it down.
Yeah, and my flatmate too. I guess I got like the most in-depth explain like what is the difference between bursary and scholarship. Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
Amazing. Okay, but yeah, you've been here almost 2 years. So describe to us what like an average day in your life looks like now.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the more common, day to day is working, right? I think one thing I do observe is the day starts a little bit later and ends a little bit later.
Yes.
I think in the States it's like more of the 8 a.m. meetings.
Yeah.
You drink your coffee.
Yeah.
Here, I think most coffee shops don't open until 10, right?
Yeah.
Like the cafes. So I think I still wake up kind of early, like definitely before 8, and then usually try to go to the gym in the morning, and then have like some morning routine stuff that I do, and then meetings until noon, and then more recently I've been cooking a lot more. Now we have a nice big pot now, so I can make my Hainan chicken rice every week now. So I have like your meal prep action going on. So I usually cook something quick and fun for lunch, and then mainly meetings. I just have a lot of meetings for my role. Just meetings, and my engineering team is based in India, so the meetings extend a little bit into the evening. And then in the week, during the weekdays, I try to have at least 2 different social things. I'm playing basketball on Wednesdays. What about you? What's like the typical day? Is it meeting heavy? Is it exploring? What's that like?
I feel like for me, because my team is global and we kind of have like a more structured schedule, I do have to start work at 8:30. Yeah, and then we do have meetings scattered like in the mornings and then also at night. So it depends, because we have meetings with like EMEA and like the US from time to time. So I'm pretty much stuck at my table like the whole time. Like I can't really pop out, because like if anything catches on fire or there's like remediations or incidents, we need to like address it.
Realize too is I feel much more like there's like a greater sense of like urgency or like panic in a way, where it's like, oh, you
Yeah.
have to be responsive to things. I think there's
Yeah.
that as an expectation.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just a function now. I'm at a startup now.
Yeah.
I have a lot more random, spontaneous calls on like weekends, on like
Oh,
mornings or
yeah.
nights. We're
Yeah.
just like, hey, we need to talk about some legal guidance. So had that last night. So
Yeah. Or maybe I also wonder it's like because of COVID as well. Like people
Certainly.
think that you're just reachable at all times now because
yeah, you kind of are, right? You're on your computer or you're on your like tablet in your room. Right?
Yeah, like where else would you be, I guess,
Yeah,
rather
connected.
than not at home. So
Mhm, mhm.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, we've both been here for 2
Yeah.
years, and a lot of things have changed, obviously. Like being Asian Americans, our lifestyles have changed, our environments have changed, our friendships, or like the people that we know also has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess when you look back on those 2 years, like what were some big milestones or learning lessons that you've had personally?
I think it's timed with some of the holidays, both our own, I guess, Western holidays as
Yeah.
well as the local holidays. I would say local holidays primarily being like Chinese New Year and National Day. You know, where were you on National Day? What did you do last Chinese New Year? I think those are almost like, you know, calendar-based milestones.
Yeah.
And then you also have, of course, Thanksgiving and Christmas as really big signals, right? Like, hey, I think Thanksgiving in particular, historically back in the States, I don't go home to visit my parents. I usually do like Friendsgiving, so I go to like my other relatives, because
Okay.
you know, Christmas is like 2-3 weeks later, so you might as well spend more time then.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always cool to like take inventory of, whoa, who am I hanging out with for Thanksgiving? What friends have I met this year?
Yeah.
I think that was a really good milestone last year, just realizing that I had a good number of friends. Yes, there were restrictions, but just having good people around you. Then I think, you know, choosing to like renew or to top up my time in Singapore by
Yeah,
signing
top
a
up.
role, right?
Yeah.
Like that was I think a pretty definitive milestone of choosing to come back to Singapore.
I mean, do you feel like you've changed? Your identity has changed? Because before, you know, you're like Asian American
Yeah.
in the U.S. You know, like it's I don't know. I just feel like there's so many parts of you that have probably changed without you even knowing it. Like, do you feel like your identity has changed?
Yeah, in a way, I feel like
Yeah.
in the States, and this is a strange thing to observe, but your existence is highly contextual, where
Yeah.
you are that friend relative to your friends in the States,
Yeah.
right? But now I realize that I'm no longer like the person who would come visit friends every month or two. Because I always made a really big effort, even when I moved away to Seattle, I'd always go down to LA to see my friends. But in a way, like, I don't know if it's the same for you, but even though I've tried really hard to stay in touch with friends, I know that I'm like the outsider now to my US friends, because I've been gone for so long, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, and then even when I went back, it was like maximum COVID alert, right? So you can't really hang out.
Yeah.
But here, it's almost in a way I realize that I'm a very like people-oriented person, that I like need to like talk to people. I feel on the days where I'm just kind of stuck all day, I'm like, oof, you know, you don't feel energized, you don't feel inspired, versus meeting new, interesting people.
Yeah.
And I think especially in the workspace, that's where I observe it the most, where most of our team is Asian, right? Half local, you know, folks across Southeast Asia. The boss is another American Asian person. But I'm one of the more like talkative or like person who like push back and like, no, that's like, I'm the one person who makes people laugh. Right, like literally during my presentations, I always like, you know, have like, not like innuendo, but just kind of like puns and just like jokes and stuff, and just try to bring levity to the situation, because I feel like work culture outside of that is very like, just please just focus. Yeah. So I think I've noticed that I kind of stand out in that way.
Yeah, I will also say too, like I think we have similar personalities in that sense, where like we do like to connect people, and I feel like you as a person are very good at like bringing connective tissue, like people together. Like you host a lot, you like bring a sense of like belonging and inclusive,ness, like at work.
So I mentioned beforehand that, you know, we've hit 8 weeks in a row of playing basketball. Like every Wednesdays, we're gonna book a court, let's play basketball. And at the first 2 weeks, it was like, oh man, like who are we gonna invite? Who do we know that plays basketball? But by week 4 and 5, we had too many people. Granted, we could only put 5 people, but it was like, yeah, who's gonna be invited to our big baller boys, you know,
like
WhatsApp group,
awkward,
right? And it's like so fun. But then now it's like, oh man, it's just like one, 2 people. I think that big chunk of like hosting dinners and stuff, it's not as, I feel like a big chunk of that identity disappears there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but hopefully when you go back to the US, you'll be able to spend that back up again.
See some people.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to just bring up as well is like, in the past 2 years, we've seen a lot of expats leave Singapore as well, right? Like our own personal friends have left this country because maybe it's like, you know, because of COVID, because they feel a need to be closer to their families, or they lost their jobs. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like being affected by that, like watching your friends leave as well.
I wouldn't say it's alarming, but it certainly puts things in perspective. When you talk to your friends that are like, I want to stay here longer, they'll say, oh, I can't wait to travel. I'm so excited. I'm here with my significant other. We're ready for another 2 years, 5 years. And then you have the other group that is like, has already left recently. I went to a lot of goodbye one-on-ones the past few weeks from some of my very close Canadian friends, and it's a little bit bummer, right? Because for them, like, hey, I always knew it was going to be a 1 to 2 year thing. Cross that line. Now it's time to go home. And I think the restrictions certainly do not help, right? People, they see their home countries, it's pretty much back to normal, so they're very much inclined to make that change and to do it as soon as possible.
It's definitely hard at least for me to accept sometimes, like, oh, I just spent all this time getting to know someone and becoming good friends with them, and then they're leaving, right? So it's a very interesting phenomenon happening in Singapore. Phenomenon.
I also find it's fascinating with like some of my European. So in moving to Singapore, I've met more European friends than I ever have, right? Because I've lived with folks from France, Switzerland, Italy, UK, and it's interesting because they have a much greater emphasis on vacation than in the States. And I think in France, you literally take a month off of vacation with your kids in the summer. Where there's a term, it's either you're a July bird or you're an August bird. I don't know how to say those months or bird, right? But that's like a term. It's like, oh, are you taking July off or August off, right? So I remember hearing my flatmates just saying, I can't believe it's 2 summers where we don't get to go skiing or get to go, to the lakes or whatnot. And I think that's been a really big emphasis of having that freedom.
And then meanwhile, in the U.S., after college, you don't even have summers anymore. You just like work through summers.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because at least it's like, oh, summer break. But for me, I was like, oh. We just go to Vegas for a week and that's it.
Oh, no, you're not old enough. Oh man. Summer internships and all that.
Okay, but going back to the main topic, which is like, we've both been here for 2 years. How do we feel about it? Like reflecting back on all this time spending here in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Well, Singapore, not Southeast Asia. Like how do you feel about it, and what are your reflections on this?
A lot of thought. I mean, it's a really core part of, I guess, life planning and just thinking about your time spent here. And it's been a good time. It's honestly been a really good time. Singapore's an absolutely wonderful place to live. It's safe, it's clean, the food is great. I think it's also very different though, because in Asian culture we are taught since we're very young that family is super important, and I think it's exemplified here in Singapore, where most of the young folks live with their parents until they get married, right? So there's that as a nuance, right, where here's a great place, but our families aren't here, and that's something that I think about a lot. And as we get older, you realize, like, what do you value, right? When you're young, you think, I value these 10 things, right? But when you get older, as the old man I am now, you realize it's not about how many values you have, but it's maybe, here are the 3 values that you have, and this is the order in which you value them, right? Where clearly we value this idea of having life experiences and moving overseas, right? And we value that number 1, which is what led us to come here, right? And maybe, career was second, and then now family is third. But as time passes, you realize, wow, I've already done this. And then as our parents age, this now becomes significantly more important, right? And I think that's something that I've observed. And I described this to a friend recently, that if I ask myself honestly, I still think that when I think of what do I dream about, it's more of the American dream than the Singaporean dream, because that's what we're taught our entire lives, 28 years for me in the States, thinking about how I want to plan my life and what does good look like versus, I've been here for 2 years, right? Like, you can live in these kind of nice condos, but it still feels very distant than what I initially imagined. And I think it's also a function of my own life stage. I came here, single, knowing that, hey, there'd be lots of people to meet, but at the same time, I wasn't like attached to staying here versus I met up with my friend yesterday, and she and her husband moved here from Texas around the same time we did.
Yeah.
And for them, it's like, oh, like we're here, we'll stick around for another 2 years, right? Because they already had that base here, and then after that set period of time, they'll move back home, right, where they're already there. So I think it's highly contextual.
Yeah, I agree. That's such a huge thing, that when you mention like the Singaporean dream versus like the American dream, there is no right or wrong, but definitely I love Singapore, and who knows, in the future maybe I'll come back, but I think where my family is, I want to be there as well. And I do see, I see my friends go to dinners or like brunches on like Sunday mornings with their family, and I miss that. Like I miss being around people that I love, and I'm just like, what am I doing here sometimes? Like shouldn't we be with the people that we love? So, but yeah, I mean, do you still like living here?
I mean, there's certain moments where, oh my god, Singapore's so awesome. And certain times you're like kind of frustrated, right? Or you kind of be like, oh, that's kind of a bummer moment. Here's one I can share today, which is, it's, it'll not get me blacklisted. It's just more of like an observation, right? Where here right now with the restrictions, they're pretty strict about things, right? Where I went to go buy like badminton birdies, right? At my beloved Decathlon lab, right? And they have a basketball court that I've been going to, just to shoot and practice at. And then I went today, after I got my birds, and I was like, gonna go check it out. And I was like, oh wow, they literally, tied up the nets, locked it, and then gated the entire area. It's like, oh, you can't play anymore. Probably because, people are playing more than, one-on-one, 2v2, breaking the restrictions. But that was kind of a bummer, because in the States, it's like, they're not gonna do that, right? Like, there will always be a basketball court somewhere, at a park, at a school. And that's actually something too. I think the search for basketball courts has been symbolic of kind of, I guess, the comparison to the US and Singapore, where in the States, every park, every elementary, middle, and high school has basketball courts, and in the evenings you're allowed to go. It's public, right? Whereas here, everything's gated, right? Where unless you have explicit permission, you can't go. So it's really hard to find a normal public basketball court. The alternative to the public courts is you can actually rent like a full NBA, I guess FIBA, but like a full regulation size basketball court indoor with air conditioning. It's super nice, and you can't do that in the States very easily. So it's kind of funny where it's, if you want something, usually you'll just have to pay for it in Singapore.
Like a premium.
But it's available. So that's something I did notice.
I had the same conversation, but about tennis courts.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing, like tennis courts, like back in the US, I could just find it on some random like school, or there's like 20 courts available, but here it's like you need to live in a condo, pay a premium. So it's very interesting.
It's more of an observation than a critique, I think. The public transit still is pretty incredible. I literally was bored today, so I just took like a bus to Orchard, because I was like, cool, might as well just go, right? And I remember it makes you realize how loud Americans are, myself included. But there was these two American guys, and they were just like really loud. Not saying they're like.
I mean, we are loud. Yeah, it's okay. Americans are loud.
Yeah, but then the thing that they said, I was like, I think the guy's name was like Cooper. It's like, Cooper, this whole bus ride was 20 cents. No way. But it's kind of cool. Like literally, you can take a bus ride, like
that's true.
Was it 10 kilometers, and it's like so cheap, and that's a privilege.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The transportation system here is perfect. Mwah.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay. Since you asked me this in your podcast, I will ask you the same thing. So as we wrap up this conversation, what is something you'd want to leave for my audience? Like, what is advice or just anything that you want to say?
I'd say if you've ever considered living overseas, you're only hurting yourself by not doing it, right? I think it's a very human experience to try and acclimate, learn a new culture, whether it's which side of the road you walk on, which side of the cars, where the steering wheel is. Those little moments you realize like, whoa, I'm no longer in Kansas, metaphorically speaking, right? I think it's a really enriching human experience that you should definitely try. And I think many people are hesitant. Oh, it's a pay cut, or oh, I'll be so far away, and what if I don't like it? Well, honestly, it's really well worth the life experience of trying something new. You'll learn so much about yourself. You'll meet so many other people, and your mental state will go to a place where you're just much more of a yes person. You're more willing to try new things. You're not as constrained by the your previous life where you have to be that guy. You were always the funny person in high school, so you have to be the funny person now. Right? You can almost in a way like reinvent yourself, but
Yeah.
continue to like improve yourself along the way. So highly recommend moving abroad for a chunk of time.
Yeah, well said, Derek. Well said. And I'm pretty sure after this video, a lot of people will want to reach out to you or chat with you. What's the best way they can reach out to you?
Sure. I can leave my email with you, I guess. Yeah, I'm trying to think what the best
like
way. Yeah.
Your website too.
Yeah, website can also work. I'll leave that with Emily in the show notes, so you guys can take a peek if you want to reach out, grab coffee, one-on-ones, or just do a video call. Happy to do so too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Derek, for your time.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
high five.
High five.
Yeah,
It's nice.
We're going home in November woo, to visit. So,
Yeah, it'll be great.
It'll be
California dreaming.
good. California. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thank
See
you.
ya. Bye.